In other words, deduct your expenses from your income, your balance on your budget will be zero. Let's take an example. Supposing we have an income of $1,000 a month. Let's look at our expenses first. Let's say your fixed expenses, including rent, things like that, add up to $450 a month. Let's say your utilities and things like that add up to another $150 a month. Let's say you have periodic expenses of auto insurance, and every 3 months you get a bill for $300. So that would mean that your periodic expense would be $100 per month if you divide that out. So let's put $100 under your periodic expenses. Here we have $700 so far. Now, we know that if our income is $1,000 and our expenses so far are $700, we could actually, starting out, we could estimate that we can save potentially $300 a month. So let's put our $300 savings into the PYF category. Now, with this budget, we have an income of $1,000. We have expenses which add up to $1,000. And when you subtract your expenses from your income, you have a balance of zero. Now, one thing I would like to point out here is many times you have, as we mentioned earlier, your expenses are variable, such as utilities, gas, and electricity, for example. So what you can do, you can express your variable expenses as a range. So we know that many of your specific expenses like gas may be $35 a month in the summer, but it may be $150 a month in the winter. So we would have a range of 35 to 150. One thing you can do is average that and get an average, and then take that variable expense average and plug it in here and come up with a specific number. Now, or you can keep it situated so that your expenses you can make a budget for your winter months or a budget for your summer months, and you can calculate those numbers in based on the season. So either way, you can either average it or take the exact numbers and try to work your budget from those exact numbers. Those either way will work for you. Now, once you've figured both of these components of your budget, the income and your expenses, you'll be able to determine how much you should pay yourself first. Once you know that, or once you can estimate what that pay yourself first will be, you should always put that number, the pay yourself first number, in your budget first before you calculate all of your expenses. Because if you have goals established for saving, then you need to keep that the highest priority in your budget. So your pay yourself first savings will be the thing that you enter into your expense category first. Then you will go down here and examine your fixed, your variable, and your periodic expenses. And if your budget comes out so that you have greater expenses than you have income, then what you will have to do is go in your budget and find out where in your expenses you can cut your expenses back so that you can rebalance your budget out to zero. If your budget comes out so that you have a surplus and the balance down here is a positive number, that means your income exceeds your expenses. That's good. If that happens, then what you can do is increase the amount of money that you pay yourself first. If you do that, you'll bring your budget back into a balance of zero. Now, one thing you can do when you look at your expenses to determine if you have to cut your expenses, what you do is you go back and you look at what items in your expense categories are needs and which items are wants. If you have things that are wants, those are the first things that you trim out of your budget, so that if you can do that, back into balance. Then you go and find ways that you can perhaps do things like put your food, look for ways that you can decrease your expense for food. You can have options such as buy cheaper food, change your diet and buy things that in bulk, and there are lots of strategies you can use to decrease your expenses, even for things that are needs. That will be up to you and your lifestyle. Remember, a budget is a tool to help you manage your money over a specific period of time. If you find yourself going into debt or not being able to control your spending or not being able to make ends meet, then a budget is something you should consider implementing for your personal life. Now, one of the things you want to do is, the first thing you examine is your spending, and you need to be able to go and look at your spending and determine if it's a want or a need, and then you need to break your spending down into fixed, variable, or periodic expenses. Once you do that, you can have a handle on your expenses and determine and prioritize what will be important for you and what will be things that you can do away with. Okay. Then you look at your income. Remember that you use your net income for your budget. The components of your budget are going to be your income, your expenses, and your pay yourself first, PYF. Now, once you look at your budget and you log everything in, and your budget, you want it to come out to zero, just remember, if the budget comes out to be a negative number, then you need to trim back your expenses. If your budget comes out to be a positive number, you have surplus money, and you should consider putting more money into PYF or your savings. If it balances out to zero, you're right on the money. Happy budgeting, and thanks for joining us. I'll see you in our next segment of our financial literacy series. My name is Jerry Boswell.